After the loss of my brother, he unfortunately died the day after we celebrated his 32nd birthday. So his birthday was September 10th. And then September 11, 2019, I got the call that he suddenly was no longer with us. And that rearranged my entire life and how I show up in the world. I had experienced grief prior to that. I'd lost, like uncles and other extended relatives. So it's not the first loss, but it's the first loss that was this personal.
So close
and
to
this
home.
close to my family. And it's just him and I.
Welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, grief and soul purpose coach and fellow griever, Tara Accardo.
Nina, welcome to Life with Grief. This conversation is going to be, dare I say, fun, talking about grief and loss and death and all the things. Then you are a fellow podcaster, which we'll get into too. So we've been on many calls and conversations, and we did, you've actually been on my podcast before. We did a little collaboration with Liz Quinn late last year. So it's late 2025 around the holidays. And then we were also on the Reimagine panel together. So we've done some things, but it is high time that we have just this amazing one-on-one conversation. So I have really been looking forward to this, and I just love you, and you are going to just bring so much to so many people here listening today. I just know it. So enough of my rambling. We'll just get into it, but I'm just so excited to have you finally.
Well, I'm so excited, and thank you. You are such a gift, really, as a person and with your podcast, with everything you do. And honestly, thank you so, so much. It's my honor to be here with you today and to get to celebrate life and grief and all the things that come with it, all the things. And you're absolutely right. There's so many things we've done, and, our worlds intertwine so much. And it's just so refreshing to be here with you, talking one-on-one. So thank you.
Yeah. I'm so excited. Well, let's get right into it. I am not going to waste any time here because you have such a powerful story, and I don't want to give anything away, but it's really been very, I guess, humbling is a good word for me lately. I've had a few people on recently that I've been recording with that have lost a sibling, and it's, as someone who doesn't have a sibling, it's been very just again, powerful is really just very impactful for me, hearing about your relationships and how it has affected you. And it really is kind of a forgotten grief in so many ways. And I can only begin to imagine the complexity that adds onto your grief, right? And family dynamics and all of the things. So we'll get into all of that, but I will really just pass it off to you to tell your story of loss, as much or as little detail as you want to share. But yeah, I'll hand it to you.
And thank you for, allowing us to speak about sibling loss, because it's one of those type of losses that is not as recognized, not as forefront. Bereaved siblings are referred to as the forgotten mourners often because our grief is typically bypassed. Everybody asks about our parents, understandably so. My goodness, understandably so.
Yeah.
And also our grief feels very dismissed, and that makes us feel like it's unworthy of even being felt or processed or expressed. Yeah. So that definitely happened to me after the loss of my brother. He unfortunately died the day after we celebrated his 32nd birthday. So his birthday was September 10th. And then September 11, 2019, I got the call that he suddenly was no longer with us. And that rearranged my entire life and how I show up in the world. I had experienced grief prior to that. I'd lost, like uncles and other extended relatives. So it's not the first loss, but it's the first loss that was this personal.
So close
and this
to home.
Close to my family. And it's just him and I. So he was my only sibling, 3 years younger than me. He was my baby, my little baby brother. And to the point that my first memory was him. He was my first memory as a tiny 3-year-old human. I remember my mom being very pregnant with him, and I was, touching her belly because I could feel his kicks. And she would say, I remember, this is my first memory as a human, so I'm going to share that.
This is the coolest thing I've ever heard. Okay, I don't get this very often on this podcast. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. So I remember her telling me to go to sleep because it was already tomorrow. And I was so confused. I was like, what do you mean tomorrow? It's nighttime. And she's like, yeah, it's past midnight, so it's already tomorrow. And she's trying to explain this concept of, past midnight is a new day. You need to go to bed. You're like way past your bedtime. And I couldn't understand it. And I just remember her laughing at the whole thing. She was probably so amused. But that was my first memory. And then, my brother was born shortly thereafter, and it's been him and I ever since. So literally ever since I can remember, it has been my brother and I, my parents. And I read after the loss of my brother, which I'll get to some of the details later, but I read a book by Annie Sclaber Ornstein. She wrote Always a Sibling. And in her book, she writes about how our siblings are the first. There it is.
That's
Yes.
insane. I have a
It's so
couple
good.
of books like propping up my microphone, and I was like, I know that book, and I literally looked down. There it is. That's crazy. Okay,
Meant to be.
I
Yeah,
do
that's
understand
the
that.
book. If you're seeing it on video,
Yes,
that's
you're
the
on
one.
video. Here you go.
If
Great
you
book.
are a bereaved sibling, and shout out to Annie, she's amazing. If you're a bereaved sibling, this is a great book for you to read. It is very comprehensive. I really appreciate the way that she did her research with all types of sibling loss, because I found that sibling loss is understudied. Barely any studies, actually. The major studies, I believe, are like in Denmark and Sweden, I want to say. Don't mark my words on that, but it's not in the US. And a lot of that is because of the nuance, like you said, whether or not you're an older child or sibling. So birth order matters. How it informs how you experience grief. It informs how you see the world. And that's what I didn't finish my thought earlier, but siblings inform your identity in the world. If you have siblings, right? Like they inform who you are, what your role is, they help you get on track in life. And if you are an older sibling, like I was, you feel responsible to care for your younger siblings. So there's a sense of who I am as I'm learning who I am as a human from childhood to teenage years to adulthood. So much of that is informed by your siblings. And so when that is taken away, when you have that point of reference and then you don't, it literally rearranges how you show up in the world. Losses in general do, but this one also has that layer of, okay, if I'm not, I'll give you this example. So unfortunately, my brother passed in late 2019. By early 2020, I started a new job opportunity. I was working in real estate, working with this developer, and we had the COVID thing going on, 6 feet apart, like, masks and all the
Really
things.
in it, yeah.
And so that was a whole other type of grief, because then, at one point I remember wishing before COVID, like, I wish the world would just stop. Like, why does the sun rise again? I need to catch my breath. This is too much. Life just keeps going. I think that's shocking as a griever, that life keeps going. That's weird.
How dare it?
How dare it? How dare the sun come up? And then COVID happened. It literally brought the world to a sort of halt.
Yeah.
And literally rearranged how we show up in the world. So it was just like a second
You were
huge
going
wave
through
of
it. Yeah.
grief and loss. And it was so bizarre. I think it was, globally we were. So this coworker says, well, now that you're an only child, and that like the walls caved in, sound faded. It was like in the movies, like, what did she just say? I felt nauseous. Not because she said anything wrong. It was that with one statement, she rewrote the story of my life. And it was the first time that I experienced the identity shift that comes with sibling loss, because at no point prior to her comment had I thought of myself as anything other than his sister. But then with that comment, it was like, how if you lose a spouse, you're a widower.
Yeah.
Or, if you lose both parents, there's all these labels that
Orphan.
I use. I was going to say orphan, but I use caveats because that a lot of people don't resonate with those labels. So.
I don't. My own grandmother, my mom's mom, called me an orphan. And that was, I can empathize with that moment where you're like, you hear that for the first time and you're like, I guess you're right on paper. But
technically, right?
Ew, I don't like it. I'm not adopting
exactly.
that. Verbiage, yeah.
So it's not that there's anything inherently wrong with having a word to define or a phrase to define what just happened. It's more how that shakes you at your core, because it rewrites in a way, it overrides your entire sense of identity. And that's a really huge source of grief and loss in and of itself. So, that's a bit about sibling loss. And with Annie, with the book you just showed, with Annie's research, so much of it is how estrangement impacts how you grieve, how, if you're adopted, how that impacts if you're adopted into a family with siblings who are related biologically.
Mhm.
If, so there's all these dynamics and there's
Wow.
all these
Yeah.
elements. So it's really interesting. But to go take it back to my story, so he unfortunately passed from substance related causes. He struggled with addiction for many years and, in and out of recovery. This was his longest stint with recovery. So he was doing really well. And I use that term loosely because as somebody who's loved somebody going through addiction, you realize that recovery is a spectrum.
Mhm.
And the example somebody gave me who's in recovery, he does work helping people get through to recovery. He said, if somebody was addicted to a hard substance and all of a sudden their only addiction is cigarettes, we consider that recovery. So it's not that you can't touch any substance. It's you refrain from the ones that could potentially cause you more immediate harm,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm using that very loosely because I'm not an expert in recovery, but this is what I've learned as somebody who experienced the loss of somebody who was in recovery.
Yeah.
So my brother, for the longest, was in a stint of recovery for one of the longest periods, almost 2 years. And we were very hopeful. We kind of said, gosh, this feels this
Got
feels like this
it.
is
Like,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
like he got this. Like he has plans. He really has his life in order. Everything's going, it's like so hopeful, right? And we kind of lowered our guard a little bit, I guess. Not
Mhm.
that, I guess I don't know. I don't want to blame ourselves for that because it doesn't matter at this point. But I remember for his birthday, it was middle of the week. I was working in real estate. I had just gotten a property under contract. And I told my husband, I had this nudge, like this inner knowing of, I want to give him a hug for his birthday. I know it's 7 o'clock and it's rush hour traffic and it's an hour and a half up north, but do you mind if we just drive up there? I just want to give him a hug. So we did. Thankfully, my husband said, yeah, sure, let's go. It's no problem. And I called my parents and I said, hey, do you mind meeting us there? Let's just like bring him a cake and sing happy birthday, like super impromptu, because we had plans for the weekend. We were supposed to go to a comedy club. So this was like random. I remember we arrived. We actually had a great time. My mom said, for whatever reason, she retold the story of his birth and funny things that happened. And I have all of that on video because I was recording it for some reason. Towards the end of the night, after we sang happy birthday, my brother says, thank you, mom. Thank you, dad. Thank you, sis. Thank you. And to my husband and my uncle who was always there. And I have all of that on camera, not knowing it would be the last time we would be together. Right. So the next day, we don't know what happened. We don't have a full picture. We never had access to his phone. There was no, which side note, digital data is really important that you assign a beneficiary or assign somebody who has a right to your phones
Who thinks
after.
of that? You
Yeah.
know, like some people might, I guess. I wouldn't.
We
Like,
sure didn't, and we
wow.
didn't expect him to leave us, right?
Right.
So, but it is really important, all these points of awareness of assigning context to your, email accounts, social media, your
Yeah.
phone, all
Just
these
your bank
digital
accounts.
assets,
Yeah.
bank accounts, yes, real estate assets, all the things. Have that in order, no matter how old you are, how young you are. It's really, really important because to this day, we have not been able to recover any of the data from his phone. There's no access. There's nothing. He was an adult. We don't have any access to any of that. So we can only guess what happened. And my guess is he probably met up with somebody from his past and the rest is history, right? I know I got the call the next day. My dad and I had this code phrase, I guess. If something was wrong, he would say, are you sitting down? So he calls me and he says, are you sitting down? In that moment, it didn't register because I was in the middle of another conversation with my husband and it just didn't click. And then he says, Joseph died. And he didn't say it that calmly. And it just was like ice being thrown all over my body, bucket of ice. And life as I knew it has never been the same. Something in me disconnected. I felt like I was watching my life from like a third person perspective, just going through the motions, being very calm, it felt like, but it was just numbness, like complete and utter numbness.
Yeah. Like, were you just in shock? Like,
Shock.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, just complete.
Shock is a better word. Right. And then we drove up again the second day at the hour north. I remember there being a full moon, and I was like, it's your fault. Like the moon, your mind is trying to make sense of everything. And I just looked at the moon and I said, this is so your fault because you make people go through weird things. So
Yep.
yeah. So anyway, so I could go on forever about that, but we'll leave it at that. It was just the moment that really shifted everything.
Oh my God, Nina. Okay, see, again, I know parts of your story. I did not know some of these details, and just, I mean, what a stark difference that
Yeah.
day versus what you just went through, and I can only, again, begin to imagine the that adding to your grief in a lot of ways, especially the, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm not going to say lack of closure, but just having to essentially guess what happened, what went wrong, however you would, feel comfortable wording that, not having answers in some way. Like, has that either now or maybe earlier on, did that impact your grief? And I don't know what ways, because I know there's a lot
Absolutely.
of people listening here that have maybe lost someone, if not anything drug or substance related, but just in some way where they feel like they don't have answers. I that can certainly complicate grief, clearly.
Absolutely. And thank you for the question. For the longest, so he died of fentanyl poisoning, and I say fentanyl poisoning because there's no legal amount of illicit fentanyl that is safe for human consumption, period. So anytime somebody sells this drug to another person with the intent of this other person consuming it,
Mhm.
there is a chance that they will die. So David Kessler says these types of losses are actually homicides, but that
Mhm.
label again could be hurtful to a lot of people. So I use that very loosely.
Yeah.
My brother's drug of choice was not fentanyl. It was more like Oxycontin type of drugs. So why do I say this? Because we have suspicions that somebody gave him something that was tainted.
Yeah.
But we don't have proof. We don't have proof. We have suspicions of who we think it was and all these things. Unfortunately, these types of, if we were to go the legal route and pursue legal, action to hold somebody accountable, even if we knew who this person was, proving intent, especially with somebody who experienced addiction, is incredibly difficult because this is part of the stigma that the person chose to consume something that they probably should not have been consuming.
Yeah.
So there's layers on layers. And I remember, because I don't know if it was because of COVID or whatever, but I kept calling the county for the autopsy and the toxicology report.
Mhm.
And they just did not have it. We didn't get any answers for about 6 months. Which in a weird way, in a really weird way, with everything that was happening, because then we had his passing, the holidays, COVID, like it was just so much at the same time that delay in a really weird way there was a little bit of grace in that because we had some time to process before I read the reports. And it was me, my parents would not read the reports. I sat down and read them. And it just, there are no words. There's no words there. Your person's life is literally in a document here being treated as like a transaction. It is the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
So then you get angry. You get angry.
I was gonna ask you about that in terms of how anger or frustration, because as you were speaking, I'm like, I'm frustrated as just a bystander hearing this story, but again, can only begin to imagine what that was like for you. And then oh God, your poor parents.
So yeah, you get angry. You get very, you want to hold somebody accountable. You want to fix or do justice by this person and everybody that's getting hurt by whoever is, selling these illicit substances, all the things. Plus, there's incredible, I talk about this often, but it's incredible shame in all of this, especially when you're in a vulnerable state, when you're grieving your person. And when somebody asks you for the cause of death, everybody wants to know, how did they die? Which, side note, please don't ask that. If the person doesn't volunteer the cause of death, Don't ask that.
Not your business.
It's not your business, right?
Yeah.
So, and this could be for many reasons. The person might not be ready to speak about it. It might
Mhm.
be too traumatic or painful. And also, it's nobody's business.
Yeah.
So, period.
No is a
So,
perfect sentence. Like, I just have that
yes.
in my mind. Like, stop being
So, when
stop
I,
being nosy.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so true. And it tells you, and that became a litmus test. Let me highlight that. That became a
Mhm.
litmus test for who was actually being supportive
Oh, thank you for
versus who
bringing
was
this up.
being nosy.
Yes.
Mhm. Curiosity, when I talk about curiosity, it's good to be heart-centered curious, meaning you genuinely care about what's happening versus, what's that phrase? Rubbernecking when there's a car accident on the
It
freeway
comes
just to
out
be
as, like,
salacious.
gossipy. Oh, gossipy is
Mhm.
not the right word, but I had that with both of my parents and stuff, and, like, people were asking questions, and I'm like, "You're so transparent. I don't feel any sensitivity behind this, true care behind this." I'm like, "I know why you're asking." And I would tailor my response accordingly because I'm like, "You don't." I was like, "You don't deserve to know the details. You don't, you know what I mean? That's sacred." Like, yeah. Yeah.
Truly sacred. And at the time, for the longest time, I wasn't able to say the words out loud because I didn't want people judging my brother's entire life
Yes.
because of the way in which he died.
Yes.
He was so much more than that. He's a human struggling with addiction, probably related to depression from a lot of life experiences that he had
Mhm.
that we sought out treatment for. We supported him in the ways that we knew how at the time. Keep in mind, I'm a vintage millennial. This was in the 1900s. So there wasn't all of these social media, like these conversations that are open. It was very taboo, very,
Yes.
very taboo. And this is probably why I now speak about it so openly because what festers in solitude and in silence literally kills people, whether
Yes.
it's by their own hands or by the hands of another.
Yep.
So I am a huge proponent of speak it out loud. I understand the
Yes.
shame is real. I am, it's something that kept me quiet for a very long time, but I said that is the shame that eventually led to his passing. I'm not going to feed that anymore. I'm his
Mm.
sister. If anything, I'm going to uplift his life. He was
Yes.
a beautiful person. He was funny, clever, kind of nerdy, but he loved science, he loved electronics, and he loved engineering. So, coding and all these things, loved nature, loved animals and was a genuinely benevolent, loving human being. That's my brother.
He's so
And
genuine. By
also
the
that
way, I know his name. I don't think we've said his name yet. What is his name?
his name is Joseph and it's spelled Yosef. Joseph Rodriguez. So they called him Joey, Joseph. I just called him brother.
Yeah.
Called me sister. That's it. He's my sweet brother and he was a very loving, kind person. So that sensitivity has a double-edged sword sometimes, especially again if you mix sensitivity with shame and silence.
Mhm.
So that is, I think, had a role to play in all of this. But he's a wonderful person, and it is hard when you are judged by the way in which somebody left.
Yeah. It's so easy to do now. People are so quick. They're so quick to judge, so quick to make comments, so quick to be curious for the wrong reasons and judge choices and all of the things. And I think especially when people aren't in it like we are and don't know them the way we do, it makes it that much faster, that much easier. And that can also add to some of our grief too, because then there's just like, oh, I feel misunderstood. My parents feel misunderstood. Like my, brother is misunderstood. And then there can be some anger or frustration or, feelings in that. And it just it just doesn't end. And that's why we talk about the
Yeah.
layers of this. I I wanna kinda, because I could go on and on with you about that aspect of it all day. You touched on something in the beginning that I'd wanted to make sure we touched on in our conversation, and that is, again, you as the sibling being a little bit of the forgotten griever. And so I wanna be respectful of your parents and how they coped, and so you don't need to go into detail so much about that if you're not comfortable, but just in terms of, like, if you could just shed a little light on, like, your family dynamic and how you felt in that, because when I speak to fellow grievers who have lost siblings, and a lot of them lately have been they just had the one, so they didn't have another one that was, like, also there they could kind of lean on, like, they essentially became an only child, if you wanna word it that way, and on paper, right? And so, again, the family dynamic shifts, and there's a lot with the parents that happens, there's such a ripple effect. So, I just wanna kinda hear from you, like, what was that I don't know a good word for this, transition like, if you will? Like, how did that sort of affect you personally? And then just, moving forward. And again, I speak to people and their parents have different levels of comfort with talking about it or not talking about it, or, depending how our parents cope with the grief, it definitely affects how we cope with ours. So I was just curious, what that journey was like for you. It's a big question, I know, but
Yeah. It is. No, but thank you. And I always say we were a sturdy four-legged table, and now we're like a wobbly three-legged table. We're still a table. We're still a family. But there's like a key part of us missing, and our structure is not the same.
Mhm.
My mother was closer to my brother than my mom and I are pretty close, but her and my brother had just this really, really special bond. So when my dad told me, my first question to my dad is, "Where's mom?" Right? I just knew. I said immediately, I feared something would happen to her because those two sort of came in as a pair. I don't know how to explain it. Their soul contracts are like, there's something so deep there.
Wow.
And my mom, he said my mom ran out of the house. She just, I guess that fight or flight literally kicked in, and she just started running outside of the house. She didn't want to be in the house. So it, it reshaped our family structure, our family dynamic. I was always sort of third parent, eldest daughter, parentified daughter kind of thing. I was always his keeper, if you will.
Yeah.
And then with everything that was happening, you go to your parents, or you at least feel like you can go to your parents, most of us, for support. And all of a sudden, I'm the one supporting them. I had to figure out a way to be strong for them. And again, with people asking how are they doing, nobody asking about me, this messaging was reinforced. So I was like, okay, I really need to take care of them, right? Now, I don't have children. He didn't have children. There's also the legacy aspect of it.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm in my 40s. I don't know if I'll have children, probably not. It's something that I've made peace with. But you also start thinking, my goodness, it's all on me, even if, as a extended family, that branch of our family tree ends with me. And that is a heavy burden to carry.
Yes.
So my dad is huge on traditions. He loves tradition. He loves children. My mom has kept her opinions to herself, but I'm sure she would have loved a grandchild. I'm sure there's immense grief there for them. And I'm also grieving the fact that I wanted to be an auntie. I wanted to, I joke around that I wish, not for the sake of the other person. This is just like a fantasy of mine, that somebody would knock on the door and say, "I'm your brother's long lost kid." And I would just take this person in and give them so much love. That's not going to happen, I don't think. So, but it's that understanding that there was such a finality, not just to his life, but to our entire family.
Yeah.
Or there will be once, I'm gone and my parents are gone. It rewrites what life means to us, to me. It rewrites the meaning of life, because so much of living is focused on future, on generations, on legacy. And that has a completely different meaning to my family and I.
Yeah.
So even just that aspect of it was incredibly disorienting, and we've had to accept, integrate, and redefine what all of that means to us.
Yeah.
My parents have been incredibly gracious with not pressuring me to do any one thing or another. Other people, on the other hand, say the darndest things. I remember at the memorial, at the memorial, there was this gentleman who also lost a son, and my dad asked him for advice. Like, what do you think we should prepare ourselves for in
I'm
this
scared of this answer.
life with grief? And he said, People will tell you the darndest things from now on.
Yeah.
Put your hand on their shoulder, look them in the eye, and just say, "You have no idea what you're talking about," and just leave it at that.
That's incredible. I've never done that, but how empowering that would
Yes.
be. Oh
And
my
at
God.
the time, we were like, "What?" Like, out of all the things he could have said, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Why is this the most important one?
You're
Well, we
like,
found out pretty
ah,
soon thereafter.
I
We were
get
like,
it.
"Uh-oh, okay, we got it." And I saw my mother, so much of sibling grief is seeing your mother loving your sibling n no longer on earth,
Yeah.
and being
Yeah.
and learning to become a mother to somebody
Mm.
who is physically not here, and learning to expand her love, not just for another human being, but another human being who has transitioned into, I believe the spirit world. Other
Mhm.
people hold different beliefs, but, into the life after life, non-physical aspect.
Mhm.
So that grief of seeing your parents mourn your brother, the ways in which they hold space for him, the times that this is not something they've ever told me, but I feel it,
Mhm.
where they love me, and also they would do anything to be with him if they could.
Yep.
The fact that there is moments where they celebrate me and I know that they're missing him so much. It's just palpable. His absence is palpable every single day of our lives. The beauty of it is that we found ways to honor him and integrate him to this day into our lives and everything we do. I got really lucky that they are willing and able to be open about these conversations,
Yeah.
and that has made a huge difference.
That's beautiful. Okay, I have 2 follow-up questions that I was actually gonna save a little bit more towards the end, but this is a beautiful time to ask them because we are just talking about it. So, I'll go with the less existential question first. What are a couple of ways that you have brought him into the fold a little bit, kept his memory alive? Because I think something, a lot of people here listening, I'm sure you get this with your listeners too, is they're just like, "How can I keep them alive when when they're not alive? Like, what does that look like? What is" so I love to give people maybe just some ideas or a little bit of inspiration. So what's something, maybe 1 or 2 things that have been impactful for you guys?
Sure. So I learned early on about continuing bonds theory, which that made all the difference in the
Oh,
world. As I was
wow.
searching, I went into like research mode about what is this grief thing and how do I navigate it and all these things. And I was putting bits and pieces together. Parentheses to that, I remember after I started the podcast, a guest said there's more literature on pet loss than there is on sibling loss. And while pet loss is incredibly valid, it's just another data point that tells siblings your grief is not valid. So
Wow.
then I said, okay, I have to figure out ways to like move through this and validate myself, I guess, because
Yeah.
this is crazy.
Because no one else is gonna do it
So,
for me, like
right. And then that combined with a fear of losing my parents, because
Yes.
again, there was COVID, we didn't know what was going to
Great
happen. And I
point.
said, am I going to lose them as well from just grief and sorrow and COVID and all the things? I didn't
Yeah.
know what was going to happen. So I immediately, instinctively kicked into this. I have to incorporate Joseph in everything I do.
Mhm.
I am the keeper of his memory now. I need to incorporate him in
No pressure.
everything. No pressure. So a lot of, to give our listeners like some ideas, one thing I did was for his birthday, we have his birthday and then his
Yeah.
death anniversary. So it's like back to back. And I remember my mom, our whole lives, she had a lot of home movies. She was always carrying the big,
Oh my
like
god, same. That was
blocky,
my dad.
yes,
Yes.
recording
The big camcorder. Yeah, yeah.
camcorders.
Yeah.
Thank you. And, and she had all these videos, so we started digitizing them. And with that, I started putting together home movies that I would showcase on his birthday, and people would come over, and it was our way of spending time with him.
Oh.
And they're beautiful. I have 5 years worth of this, and I stopped on the 5th year because there was a lot of pressure. I was like, okay, that's enough. We also did these rituals, like little things. My mom loves gardening, so we created a Joseph garden in our backyard. She ordered a special sign that says Joseph's Garden, and we have this fountain that is his fountain, and it's his trees, and he loved avocado, so we planted an avocado tree. We put a bench underneath it.
Oh my
So that's another way that we get to spend time with him, we went to this lantern festival and did a ritual of releasing the
Oh, I
lanterns on the lake.
love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
And we speak his name. I think that's the most important thing.
yeah.
And at first it was with an intense sorrow. Over time, it shifts to joy
Yeah.
and love. So we do a lot of that. I have a Joseph journal that I remember, I think it was Megan Devine, I saw early on. She said, you're going to, as much as this seems counterintuitive,
Yeah.
you're going to want to remember the early days because it was such a point of connection, and that will shift over time. As much as you want to escape those early days in the early days while you're in it, when you look back on year one, year two, part of you wants to remember a little bit more detail. So she said, leave yourselves breadcrumbs. And my breadcrumb was my journal. And now I have this conversations with my brother, like all the things I didn't get to say to him. Initially, it was, where did you go? Where did you go? Where did you go? Then it was, what happened? What happened? What happened? And all these wondering and trying to find answers. And over time, I've seen that shift to, hey, mom and dad got a new house, and I have this puppy named Louie, and we traveled over here, and we miss you here, and dad cooked this for you. And all of a sudden, it becomes almost like a conversation. And that's how I practice continued bonds. I don't know if I said this earlier, but it's the concept of death ends a life, but it doesn't have to end a relationship. So it's keeping that relationship alive.
Yeah. Which I think is so difficult for us grievers, especially when we're a little bit earlier on, to fathom and imagine and put into practice, because I know I've been there. They can feel so far away. And so I think it's however we can bring them in, make them feel a little bit closer. Like, I am a big believer in that it's energy. And my mom always said this too. So I think I also have Lori Jordan in the back of my head, who's just like, we come in as energy and we go out as energy. She was so spiritual and a total whack job in the most beautiful way. And so she was big on that. And so whenever I picture that, I'm just like, okay, so it's that. And then like, okay, let me feel into that. And all of those things. I love all of those. Oh my God, the family videos really got me too. I will sometimes watch those when I'm just sad or just want to like relive a little bit of my childhood. And sometimes, we might do those things, and I know people can get really stuck there. It's easy to get stuck in the past, right? Simpler times, a time when they were alive and happy and healthy and here and all of that, but shifting it eventually to, yeah, it's always going to be bittersweet reminiscing, but it's in a healthy way, right? And I think all of the things you just mentioned are beautiful examples of keeping that bond alive in really helpful, like fruitful ways that are, again, I'm going to use the word healthy and productive almost in a way, where it's not like keeping us stuck, but it's just it's keeping them alive.
Yeah.
And
you touched on the woo. Can I make a parentheses about the woo? Yes.
Please.
So
I love the woo.
As much as I've learned, and I got the certification for grief care, and I've read the books, and I've read studies and talked to experts in grief and all these things. If I'm really honest, I was thinking about this the other day. If I'm really honest about what actually helped me navigate loss, it was, again, this heart-centered curiosity and this openness to the relationship of continued bonds.
Yeah.
This also looked like what some people call woo stuff. I don't label it that. I just love understanding that there is a connection with the unseen. Yeah. You could say it with, this could look like prayer. This could look like meditation. This could look like all of the signs that we receive. This could look like somebody, going through mediumship, if that's your thing. I don't judge it. I say, I humble myself enough to say, I don't know what I don't know. And I'm open to learning. And when you look at it from that perspective, it doesn't mean you're converting to anything. It doesn't mean you're changing your belief system. It just means you're opening the door to possibility. Yep. And instead of judging it, what I always say is this helpful to you, or is this not helpful to you? Is it harmful? Is it beneficial? Is it, put it in two buckets. Keep it so very simple. I remember learning about near death studies, or excuse me, near death experiences, NDEs, through IANS, which is the International Association for Near Death Studies. Then, YouTube does its algorithm thing and it starts feeding you other stories and other stories. And next thing you know, there are hundreds of thousands of these stories. There's so many and they have so many elements in common.
It's incredible.
At the time, and I'm, baptized Catholic, at the time, my grandfather would gather us together. We would do our prayers. We would do all the ceremony, religiously speaking. And that was incredibly helpful in terms of rooting us in some kind of ritual and practice together as a family. That was really helpful. And there was no scripture. There was no scientific research. Nobody could tell me anything to quell my desire to understand where he went.
Yes.
Like nothing made sense to me. I said, what do you mean your shoes are still here? What do you mean I'm holding the cup that you were drinking out of less than 24 hours ago? Where did you go? Where did you go?
Yeah.
In
an
And so,
instant.
yeah, in an
So hard
instant,
to wrap
like
our
you
head
were
around.
just there. So that none of the traditional systems of, finding answers, they didn't serve me at the time.
Yeah.
And in my need to know, I found, metaphysics and spirituality and connection with spirit and being open to signs and NDE stories and life after life studies and all these things that were what actually helped me find just the slightest bit of peace and levity in understanding that it's okay if we don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
So I just want to open the door for whoever's curious that it doesn't mean that all of a sudden your life is going to change and you're going to be into this woo-woo world. Although if you do, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
It just means open the door to possibility and to being curious. So I wanted to include that in there.
Thank you so much for saying that. And I have to just echo everything you said because I feel the exact same way. Shocker. We get, we're very much on the same wavelength. I could not have said any of that better. And I also agree with you. I say woo woo because some people consider that if you ask my husband, all of us woo woo. And then when you die, that's it. It's black. There's nothing. And I'm like, I can't subscribe to that. I just don't. There's two. And I also, again, I grew up with my dad was also like that, but I grew up with a mother we watched Teresa, the Long Island Medium. Like she was connected. Let me just tell you some way. And the older she got, the more she was. And I've dabbled. I've started to dabble. I've started to get more into that. I'll be very honest. Going to a medium every so often, one that I really trust and has proven to be good and all the things, I've even had them on the podcast, has helped me. And I always say, very much like you, I don't push anyone to do that. It's opening the door to the possibility. Because I, like you, was like, you just can't wrap your head around, like, they die, that's it. And that's where I come back to, like, for me, it's the energy. I've heard a very famous medium, I think John Edwards is his name, which you may or may not know him, but he like described like basically where our loved ones are, if you want, because again, they feel so far away. We don't really know where they are. He was like, you can almost think of it as like a shower curtain, like one of those clear ones, but one that's like, you can see a figure through, but not like them super in detail. He's like, it's like that. They're that close. You know what I mean? So again, I never say those things to like push anyone into thinking that or feeling that, but just to, like you said, get curious, the metaphysics of everything. It's fascinating. And if nothing else, it's just fascinating to learn about and to just wonder about. And there's also a lot of science behind a lot of this too. So
Yes. Yeah.
this could be a whole nother podcast conversation. But
Yes.
I'm so
And one note on mediumship, because I've gotten some messages through mediums, and the most shocking one was shortly after my brother died, it said, "Oh, he's with David." We had just lost my cousin, David. Nobody knew about that.
Stop. See,
Like
when they
not
bring the
even
things
6
up
months, like maybe less than a year prior. So, and she's like, "Oh, he's with David." And when she said that, I said, "What the I mean, what are the chances?" Like,
Yeah.
what? So, there's all these little things. There's a caveat to look for evidential mediums. There's the Forever Family Foundation that they vet their mediums properly, so it's
Oh,
not
I've
just
not
believing
heard of
anybody
them. That's a
because
great resource.
there's
Okay.
so many people, like, kind of capitalizing on this and
Oh,
people's
yeah,
vulnerabilities at the time, so just have that discernment for sure.
definitely. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Thank you so much for touching on that. I think it's really
No
important,
problem.
and it's, it really it can be so helpful for people. And I know some people will be like, "Ugh, okay, it's whatever helps you sleep at night. If it helps you to believe in that stuff." I've gotten that from some family before on my husband's side. And I'm just like, you know what? It does help me, but I'm not delusional. I don't think. Like it's not, I'm not clinging on to something because I'm so desperate to feel closer to that. There's just an inner knowing that like it doesn't it doesn't stop there. That's what I'm choosing to believe. Again,
For
everyone
sure.
has their own viewpoint on it, but
For sure.
it can be very healing and can be very helpful with those continuing bonds. And so I love that you brought that up. Thank you. One of the things that, as we kind of slowly start to wrap up, one of the things that you had touched on earlier, to come back to my sort of like existential question, and hopefully I'm going to word this correctly now because I want to like think about the way that you had worded this, but like, and you can answer this kind of however you want. You had mentioned something like about you slash your parents, like obviously, of course, his passing rearranging your whole lives, but almost just like the meaning of life and like the purpose, if you will, and what we're really here for, and like that sort of thing. And when you touched on that and that it did that I'm like, I gotta know what your thoughts are on that now, because I think loss does that for us. I've come out with episodes about this like kind of recently, and it really does, right, rock everything in our life, and it shakes the foundation that we have been so comfortably sat on for the longest time. But as eye-opening and of course devastating as it can be, it can really bring some very eye-opening, life-altering changes. And for many of people, of course, the death is devastating. That's always gonna be a fact. That's always gonna be a thing. But there's so much post-traumatic growth, if you will. There's also some really powerful and incredible and beautiful realizations, and it wakes us up to life in a lot of ways. So I just wanted to hear from you, like what, and again, this certainly leads into the work I think that you do, but just anything else that you want to touch on here. I would love to hear what that journey has been like for you and what has come up for you in that.
So basically, what is the meaning of life now? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
No big deal.
I told you,
So,
existential.
so I love, love, love that question because when we lean into grief, I have found we also lean into our purpose.
Yeah.
Grief to me, grief work is life affirming work. It is it's the most powerful force that has helped me shed what wasn't mine to hold in the first place.
Oof, that's
And
I love that.
that obviously happened with the loss of my brother because you don't even have the energy to fake things. My tolerance level
No.
for small talk and BS conversations went to negative nothing. And I cannot. It was almost like I said, I was working in real estate. People were asking me about wall colors and floor tiles and all these things. And as important that is as you're building your home, I'm not saying that it's not important. It's your home. And also, I could not care less. I was like, this is so inconsequential. Respectfully, this is so inconsequential. My
Pick a
goodness,
color,
I don't care. You want to put carpet on your ceiling? I just don't care. So when I reached that point that I was very detached from the work, I was almost resentful of it. I said,
Mhm.
okay, something is really misaligned here. And I get I'm grieving, but it's like beyond grief. Something's just not right here.
Yeah.
So I decided to connect with, and this will get to the answer, but I decided to connect with a career coach, and she's a holistic career coach.
Oh, I love
Except for I went into it like, hey, help me like revamp my resume. I need like something new. What direction should I go? And she revamped my life. So I got my money's worth. She was amazing.
That's so cool.
She helped me. She helped me dig deep and reflected back to me where I was at in life, what was shifting and what was calling out to me. And I worked with her, for a year. In that year, it was just pure shedding, alchemizing. And if I'm not Nina, if I'm not Joseph's sister, if I am not a woman, if I am not Hispanic, if I'm not this person living in Florida, if I'm not all the things that I have, like, strip me down to my core.
Yeah.
If I'm not any of this, what did I come in here to do? In here meaning earth existence, right?
Right.
No, not small questions here.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. So the short answer
love
of
this
that
though.
is I'm learning what this is every day. It's
Mhm.
an ever evolving question. It's not a one and done.
Yeah.
But she taught me how to identify the next step forward in a way, the way I envision it. It's like if I'm in pitch black, all of a sudden something on the floor will line up, and I just know that that's the next step.
Yeah.
And then eventually something else will line up, and on and on and on.
Inner
And
knowing.
before you know it, you're carving your path. But she helped me see that light that I need to follow. And it's my light. It's not anybody else's light.
Right.
So when I realized this, and what I kept going back to is I love the conversations that are emerging from grief. And I can't believe I'm saying that, because what? That doesn't even make any sense. Until I realized so much of grief is life, it's love, it's the other side of,
Mhm.
also intertwined. I could get very like abstract about this, but the point being, my answer now, especially when, again, I don't have children, legacy looks different. I have had to redefine some things for myself. I do believe in the concept of us as spirit having a human experience. I do believe that.
Mhm.
I used to subscribe to the belief that this was like Earth school, and that has taken a backseat to the belief that we are here as creators,
Mhm.
and our inherent, well, let me speak for myself. I believe that we are here to create, right?
Yeah.
A lot of that is also tied to whatever we create has to lessen suffering for others.
Mhm.
That's also a belief system that's tied in there.
Great.
And I keep going back to the quote by Ram Dass. He was kind of like a spiritual teacher, philosopher, researcher,
Yeah.
like all these things. And he says, we are all just walking each other home, whatever home means. So I keep going to that, the definition and what that looks like, the definition of that phrase, how it manifests in my life, what that looks like over time, and what I choose to do with my life is constantly evolving. But it comes back to we are all just walking each other home. As woo-woo as I could get, and sometimes I got lost in our spiritual purpose and all these things, what I kept coming back to is full circle, that at the end of the day, no matter what our role is, we are humans first. We're in this human experience because that is what is meant to be in focus at this time. What happens after this, I have no idea. Honestly, I have theories, but I have no idea. I will find out.
Till we experience it for ourselves. I guess we don't.
We'll experience it
really
for
know,
ourselves.
but
But the one that is in focus right now is being human. So what does being human mean? And to me is helping other humans get through this thing called life, to add kindness, to add light, and to lessen the suffering for others. That is my definition today. That might shift later, but that's what I'm hanging on to today.
Ooh, that is so good. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad I asked you this. I knew I was gonna get a phenomenal response out of you on that one, because I'm so aligned with everything you said, and that very much ties. I was just thinking like my work in soul purpose coaching, and I don't like the word coaching, guiding, if you will. It's like it's that. It's stripping us down, and like all of these, I don't want to say like labels, but these things that we see ourselves as XYZ's daughter, XYZ son, whatever. And not that those things aren't important. Of course they are. They're key to our identity, but it's like bring it back home for us. Like I love that. I love and Ram Dass, and my mom was very into that too. We're channeling Lori a lot today.
Love her.
And
Yeah.
I know she's all up in this conversation. And it's humbling, it's eye-opening, it's life affirming, it's soul affirming. And when you feel like you are coming back into your self and your skin and your what you are like meant to do here. And I know that can be very overwhelming for people. And it's like it's not something that we have to put pressure on, right? Like I think I don't want to speak for you, but like as you were talking and as I found myself getting into this like grief work and the podcast and all these like it was just it felt like the next aligned step at the time, getting a grief coaching certification, doing soul purpose. It was like all revealing itself. And that's why I love what you were mentioning earlier in terms of, and I think this is a beautiful place to start closing the conversation today. It's just the being open, right? Because I also want to respect, depending on who's listening today and where you are in your grief, right? Some people might be like, I'm way too early on to hear any of this. Thank you guys. But it's just, I think it's so important to put out there. And these are the things that the conversations that I sort of wish I had heard a little earlier on. I heard little dabblings of it. I, at one point too, was probably like, kick rocks. I can't hear any of this right now. Like, but it is really profound what, dare I say, doors our grief could open. And just, it's not even like the loss itself or whatever, but it's just this process that continues to unfold. The loss that, like, again, like we've clearly covered in your story today, it just takes on new forms and your identity continues to shift. And there's unraveling that continues to happen. And the ripple effects truly are so real. And again, you've mentioned so many beautiful things that, and it wasn't just your brother's passing, right? There's the legacy, all these things that we, you know, expect to maybe go or look differently. And there's grief in that too. And so that's why, like, again, purpose of this podcast is, also helping not just grievers, but like other people and supporters, whatever, understanding that like it's more complicated than that, right? This is so beyond the first 6 months or year. Like it's life-changing stuff, period. But
Absolutely.
I just love your like overarching message today too of just like, just get curious. Dare I say, have a little fun with it, right? Like you just never know what opportunities, what doors, just things that could befall you if you
Yes.
like
And
allow that in.
like you said, there's a timing to all of this. So you're
Yes.
absolutely
Oh
right
God,
that
yes.
if I would have heard myself saying this year one, I would have just maybe not listened,
Yep.
because it wouldn't have made sense in that time. So there's a timing. And like you said,
Definitely.
to me, everybody holds the key to their own healing.
Mhm.
My path forward is not the next person's path forward.
Right.
This is what I discovered for myself. And part of this work, and like you say, this is why I feel comfortable talking to you about it, because I feel like you get all of this deeply. And part of the work is helping the other person unearth what their path forward is according to their own inner knowing and inner guidance. So it sounds like you do the same, like never put my beliefs on somebody else,
No, it's
ever.
illuminating, it's helping them.
Mhm.
It's like what your coach did with you, which and they sound incredible, by the way. It's just
Yes, yeah.
illuminating, it's like reflecting it back to them. We're not there to, and that actually took a lot of pressure off, truthfully, as a coach. I'm like, "Oh, I don't have to tell them what to do." It's really just having a dialogue and conversation and questions that reflects back to them so they get it, so they get there on their own timing and in their own way. Because you can't force that. It has to come from within them or it's not gonna be true to them. It's not gonna be their highest good and highest self coming through and getting to those realizations and things. Like, it has to happen organically. Yeah. Incredible. Oh my god.
That's beautiful.
I wanna quickly, I mean, I know we're ahead of time here, but I just wanna, like, touch on your work really quick. So in terms of the podcast and any other work you do, I just wanted to give you a moment to spotlight, again, the incredible work that you do and have so clearly been so divinely led into, and again, you're helping so many people. You are so one of the things I absolutely love about you, Nina, is, like, your words, the way that you speak, but your writing too, is so ju there's just an energy in it that I just I don't see very often. You're just so beautiful with your words and again, spoken and written. So I just want to like let you highlight everything that you do really quick. So podcast, I know you have a Substack, all the things. So just quickly like walk us through that and then like of course where people can find you if they want to connect with you, listen, all the things.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, you can connect with me at griefandlight.com and at Grief and Light on across platforms. I'm most active on Instagram, Threads, and Substack. Those are like my top three. And thank you so much for validating the writing. That was an evolution and unraveling into the next step this year. I really feel like writing is calling my name.
Me too.
And I've been using my Substack to practice. So that's griefandlight.substack.com. It's called Resting Grief Face.
I love
Which
the
I
name, by
thought
the
was
way.
so funny.
It's so good.
I saw this picture. I was going through old pictures of when we were kids and everything, and there's this picture of me with like just this little RBF face as a little kid. And I was like, oh, I've always been like this. This is great. Okay, good to know. I see the through line. And also, like, grievers are told to smile and look at the bright side and all these things. Thank you. And it just feels like, ugh, exactly that.
Eye roll.
So the resting grief face is more like, hey, you don't have to fake it for anybody. No forced smiles allowed. We can be honest about this reality. So a lot of writing there. I hold monthly grief groups, and I was doing one-on-ones, but I've been putting that to on hold, this year a bit while I focus more on writing. And yeah, the podcast, everything, all my offerings are on griefandlight.com.
Beautiful. Amazing. Nina, this was incredible and so expansive. I told you, I was like, I knew this was going to be a great birthday episode because it was such great timing in terms of just, again, I just hope everyone walks away feeling just a little more expansive, just 1% better, 1% more inspired, 1% more open. That's what I hope to do with these episodes. But also, I just want to thank you too for sharing so vulnerably about your experience with loss with your beautiful brother and his experience, and just sharing him with us and just his person. Like, he sounds like such a dynamic person too. I'm like,
everybody loved him. Whoever met him, they just loved him. He's so sweet. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing him with us today too. This is an amazing conversation. I'm just so grateful for you.
And thank you for all that you do, for the light that you bring into the world, and for who you are. Thank you so much, Tara.